Welcome to the 8th and final video, Frequently Asked Questions. This is the video where we try and get to grips with some of the questions which are commonly asked about postgraduate funding from charity. Now, because no charity application experience amongst students will be the same, and because experiences can sometimes be very diverse and bizarre, obviously there aren't any one-size-fits-all answers, but nonetheless I can still try to deal with a few of the most common questions.
How do I use the website?
Okay, very simple. Have a look at the introduction section, and there's an introductory video there which will give you a short primer on how you use the website.
What's the difference between the Alternative Guide to Postgraduate Funding book and this website?
Okay, that's a good question. So for the previous 4 years, the Alternative Guide to Postgraduate Funding existed only in a book form. This year, it's become a website as well. And obviously a whole host of interactive features have been added, like these videos, the funding database, the financial statement and personal statement assistant, etc. You can actually download the entire alternative guide in book form as a PDF by going to our download point page, which you can print and read at your leisure.
Will this site be updated?
Yes, indeed it will be. Every month new charities will be added to the funding database, and those charities which we have added will be listed in our bi-monthly email newsletter, The Crow, which you can sign up for free at this link.
I want to know more about GradFunding, the publisher.
Okay, well, GradFunding as a publisher, probably the best thing you can do is have a look at the About Us section, but we are a London-based publisher and have been running for 5 years now, and we were originally set up by 2 postgraduate students who funded their entire degrees, PhD degrees, through charities and trusts.
Why haven't I heard about postgraduate funding from charities before?
Simply because very few people actually ever have. Charities and trusts are very obscure, they're not listed anywhere on the internet, and to be honest, most people tend to think in terms of giving to charity rather than receiving money from charities.
I'm an international student. Do charities only make grants to UK students?
Yeah, again, this is another quite common misconception, that because charities seem quite British, quite old-fashioned, that they wouldn't be interested in applications from international students. As it happens, probably around a quarter to a third of charities will only make grants to UK nationals, but the vast majority of charities are concerned with you being resident in the UK rather than being a UK national, and that's a criteria most overseas students are fine with. Also, there are many charities which are only for overseas students.
I'm a master's student. Are charities only interested in research students?
So again, I think this is another quite popular misconception. Charities are tremendously useful amongst research students, but remember that the vast majority of charities on this website and on other resources are not academic bodies first and foremost. A student applying to a charity might be competing with, say, a local residents association who wants to remove some graffiti from a local playground, or someone applying to do an MVQ in bricklaying. Literally, the awards are that diverse. So therefore you can see that the difference between a research student and a master's student don't really seem that great in the eyes of a charity.
I'm on a short master's course. Is it worth me applying?
I think it is. Most charities have multiple deadlines a year, sometimes 4, sometimes 6, sometimes 12. They're also really fast, dealing with applications in a couple of months. So they're actually really perfect for quick fundraising. If you're on a 1-year master's course, or maybe you're trying to get some funds for the 4th year of a PhD, you'll definitely get something out of applying for charities, simply because the time turnaround period is very, very short.
I have a place on my course, but I haven't started yet. Are the odds of me gaining funding worse?
Okay, so there's a question about prospective students. So it is probably true that it's harder to convince a charity to grant you money before your course has started, because they don't have a guarantee that you are actually going to start. So generally, funding that you get for prospective students will often be conditional on you actually taking up that place, i.e. the charity will make the payment to you or to your university when you start at that university. Another critical thing if you're a prospective student, make your decision to go and do that postgraduate degree seem like it's something which is already set in stone, rather than a plan which might be changed and and you might not do, because otherwise then charities will think you're flaky and probably will give the money to someone else.
I'm studying for a vocational course. Will charities consider sponsoring me?
Absolutely. Again, that relates to the question about people thinking that charities are interested in research courses rather than vocational ones. Many charities are actually interested in simply helping people realise goals in relating to education or training. And if you're doing a vocational course where maybe you'll be obviously make yourself more directly employable, then a charity will really like that, and you won't be disadvantaged at all relative to a research student.
I don't have very good qualifications. Will this disadvantage me?
So there are some charities, a small minority, that are more academic in their focus, and yes, of course, it would disadvantage you with that. But the vast majority of charities are actually more interested in your financial plan, the reason you're doing your course, ultimately how it's going to benefit you and society, than it is really in grades, or how prestigious your university is, or any of those things. So generally speaking, it actually doesn't matter very much what grades you've got.
My university isn't very high on the league tables. Do charities discriminate these against other institutions?
No, not at all. Charities are often concerned with helping many people, including members of the public, who are unlikely indeed even to have a bachelor's degree. Therefore, whether your university is high or low on the league tables won't really matter very much in your application to a charity.
My university is a small specialist college. Won't this make it harder for me to get funding from charity?
So if it's an art, drama or music institution, I actually think it will probably make getting funding slightly easier. Obviously, there's a great public enjoyment for these things like drama and art and music, which you can use to your advantage. And also I think there's always an extra degree of sympathy for students in that category, because I think it's well known that not very much other funding is available.
What help can my university give me in finding voluntary sector funding?
I think the best thing that you can do at your university is you can go along to the Careers Library, and they may well have some copies of some of those books that we talked about in the Finding Funding section, most notably the Grants Register. They also may have some information there about about charities maybe which apply at that university, maybe which exist out of former alumnus donations.
I've read that charities are heavily oversubscribed. Will the money run out?
Well, of course, we can't possibly forecast that. It is possible that if more students apply to charity, then some of them may close down or stop making grants, but it's also possible that supply may generate its own demand. And more charities which don't currently offer funding for postgraduate or indeed undergraduate students may begin to do so. I predict that in the future, the voluntary sector will become a much more major funder of both undergraduate and postgraduate study than it is at the moment. And so I do think that in the future we will see more charities offering student funding rather than less.
Funding from the voluntary sector sounds like a great deal of effort for a small return. Is the effort really worth it?
I think that if you have the right approach and you make applications to multiple bodies, reusing large amounts of your application, obviously in separate applications, then you can create what might be called a more kind of an economy of scale. So you actually have to do relatively little work per application. And so in that respect, it's not actually a tremendous amount of effort once you've gone to the trouble of compiling one application.
Do I have to share my financial details and bank statements to charities?
No, this is a myth. Charities never ask for financial details like bank statements. They will ask you for a financial statement, but that is something you write rather than requiring any complex documentation.
Do I have to pay tax on charity awards?
No, you don't.
Are there any strings attached?
Again, people assume that because charities are old-fashioned and sometimes seem a bit bizarre, there must be strings attached. This is absolutely a myth. The only thing that charities require you to do is to write a report at the end of the year, maybe about half a page in length, which just says how things are going.
Can my research group apply for a grant collectively, or does it just have to be me?
Sometimes you can apply as a research group, and sometimes therefore you can actually be eligible for charities which say that they don't grant awards to individuals and are interested in funding for groups. So there is sometimes an option, perhaps maybe for people in the sciences, who obviously have a tradition of kind of collaborative working.
Can I use charities for postdoctoral research funding?
Yes, you can, in fact. Although that isn't the main subject of this website, many postdocs in the past have used the techniques that are on this website to approach charities and trusts and have got funding, particularly for things like bench fees and consumables and research and travel and that sort of thing.